Hi, topic for this session is array as function parameters. We need to see how we can pass arrays or a particular element of an array to a function. In the first scenario, we need to pass an element of 1D array. Suppose we have a 1D array or a simple array in which we want to pass one of its element to the function. How we can do that? So we took up a scenario in which we pass an element I of array named array into a function called fun, right? So from the main function we are calling the function, we write the name of the function and pass the I, like ith element, as array bracket I. So whatever the value of I is, for example the value of I is 2, so the third element of the array will be passed to the function, and the function on the receiver end, or where the definition of the function is given, there only a single integer is received because we have passed one element. So one element is received, so therefore we write int the variable name, so it's a single integer value, and we perform our task. So this is the first scenario. Let's see a corresponding code to this. In this we have a main function here and a function fun defined at the top. So what we do in the main, we start the execution from the main. We are there declare an array of 5 elements, then a counter variable to count the number of iterations we perform. We take the input of the array or input the value of the arrays, that there are 5 elements, so it starts from 0 to 4, less than 5, that is 4. 0 to 4 we scanf, we take the input from the user, right? We store them, and then we pass an array element by array. Then we pass array element by element. We start the counter from 0 to 4. We pass the fun function, which is here at the top, the element ith element. Ith means initially the value of counter is 0. The first element of the array will be passed to fun, and here we are just printing the value. So that will be printed. The first value will be printed. Then we have the value of counter as 1. So second element of the array will be passed from here, will go up and get printed. Then we have counter value is 2. The third element will go up and display its value. Then the value of counter is 3, which means fourth element will go from here, and that can then get printed by the function. The function is just printing the single value received from the main function, right? So in this way all the 5 elements of the array are passed to the function one by one, and they are printed on the screen. This was the example of passing a single element of an 1D array to the function. So in the next scenario, what we are trying to do is we are trying to pass the whole 1D array as one go to the function. So for that we have a scenario in which we have a function name called fun being called from main. When we are calling the function from main, we pass the whole array name instead of passing one element at a time, and the number of elements that array has. Right? This is really important because the function fun doesn't know how many elements an array has, right? So for that we need to pass the number of element or the element count as well. So in the fun function we will receive an array plus the count of elements in an array. Now let's try and understand this scenario with the help of an code. In this code we have, in the main we have an array of 5 elements and a counter to count the number of elements, right, or to traverse through the array. And this we traverse through an array and input the 5 elements of an array from the user as we did in the previous example. Then we pass the whole array as an array with 5 number of elements as 5 to the function. In the function we receive both the things, the whole array as well as the count. And for this count we type in printf for starting from 0 less than element count, that is 4 in this scenario, and we print all the elements individually through a index value, right? So okay, in this scenario we are passing one of the rows of a 2D array. We have already discussed 2D array in the previous sessions. what it is, how we can declare it. So while passing one of its row, suppose we have 5 rows, so we pass one of its row to the function. The main function, we pass one of the ith row to the function and the number of columns it has, or we can say the row length, or each row, how long is the one each row, right? So we can take it that way also, right? So in the receiving function, we'll have an sim 1D array and a length or of telling the how much is the number of elements in that. In this particular program, what we are doing is we have declared a 2D array and taken a couple of elements or the variables to count the number of rows and columns. We took the input of 2D array, all the elements of a 2D array, by putting couple of loops that we have already discussed in the previous session. Then we pass each of its row one by one, starting from 0 to 4 to the function. What this program is doing is, suppose we pass the first row of the 2D array to the function will calculate the sum of all the elements of first row and give us the sum, right? Then we pass the second row in this while we are iterating for the second time, that is the R counter value is 1, to the function, and that function is going to calculate the sum of all the elements in the second row and we display it or print it, right? Similarly, we are printing all the sum of all individual rows on the screen. This is the program what it is doing, right? So we passed in, it received a single 1D array because one of its row is a 1D array, and the length telling you the number of elements in the array. Then we took a counter from 0 to less than row length or the number of elements, right, and add them to find the final sum of all the elements of an 1D array, right? This is how it will look like. Suppose I have entered an array that has 1 1 in the first rows, all 5 ones in first row, second row has all 2s, and so on, and this is how the output will be visible to us. First sum of elements in the first row is 5, sum of elements in the second row is 10, and so on. This small point that we need to concentrate on is, we are passing the number of columns, then number of rows, and then the 2D array. We are not putting any bracket after the array, we pass simply the name of the array. So it should be, while we are making a program, we should understandably make it a 2D array in the function definition. The bottom is the function definition, and in the first box it's the function call, how we need to call it. So in the definition we have number of columns, number of rows, and then we have a 2D array. In this is really important that we need to put in the number of columns in. We cannot keep this second square blank, right? We need to tell at least one of the values out of 2D array. This is a catch in here, then a example, right? So let's see a code how we did it. So in the main function we declare 2D array. We took the output of the input from the user for the whole array, and then we passed the whole 2D array at one go. There is no loop, we are passing the whole array 2D array at one go. It is received with the row length, the column length, and the whole array is like the number of elements in the each row is 5. So we need to put it 5 here. I told you in the previous slide as well. So now we need to scroll through the or traverse through the whole 2D array. What we are trying to do in this particular example is for simple understanding. We are trying to sum up every element of a 2D array and then find the average of the whole, like all the elements. Suppose we have 20 elements, 5 into 4 matrix or 5 into 5 matrix in this case is 25 elements. We add in all 25 elements and then find the average of it, right? So when you traverse to each element of an array, for that we have put in couple of loops, and then we added each element of an array to a variable, so that we have the sum of all the elements in WSUM variable. Then we divide this by the total length or total number of elements, which give us the average. This is how it will look like. Suppose you take the same inputs 1 1 1 and so on, 2 2 2 3 3 4 and 5. Now if we add all of them and divide it by the 25, 5 into 5, right, number of elements are 25, so we get an average of 3. That is the answer. Now let's do pass a row of 2D array with pointer. Right? We see how we can pass the 2D array, row of a 2D array. Just an example, because we should know how to deal with pointers as well. It is similar, like it's somewhat similar to the previous slide, right? We took in to declare a 2D array with counters for row and column. We took the input from the user for each element, putting a double loop out there, and then we passed each row one by one, which is actually going to go to the function and will calculate the sum of all the elements of each row, right? So the first row goes in there, calculate the sum of each elements in the row and print it. Now let's concentrate on the pointer. So we pass in one row. Now this one row is been received by a pointer variable, right? We have already covered the pointers, how they handle it. They handle an array, simple array, right? So what we'll do is it will have all the elements of one of the rows of a 2D array with a single pointer, right? Now how we are going to refer to this? Let's come to that. For doing the sum of all the elements of a single array, single 1D array that is passed to the function, we write in single row, which is the address of the starting point of a 1D array, plus column counter. So in the first scenario it will be the address plus 0, that is address that we have. Then we have the star that says value at this address, right? It means value at this address is the first element. Now the second scenario, counter value is 1. So 1 will be added to single row, which is not actually 1 in terms of memory. In terms of memory it's 4 bytes, because integer is 4 byte. So it adds 4 byte to it and moves to the second element in an array, to the address of a second element in the array rather, right? So single row, or the address of the first element plus 1 is going to move address to the second row, and then put star the element at that second element of the row. It will be added again back to the sum variable, right? So this way we'll get the sum of all the elements of an array, and then we print it. Let's see, the example is same that we did in the previous slide example as well, right, where we were passing without pointers also. So output, input and outputs are same.